Hey, welcome everybody. It's Big Dave here, and this is our Unremarkable Brain podcast. Tonight we were recording live with Dr. Vincent Ben Bocchicchio. Let me do a quick intro for Dr. Ben, and then we'll get into our discussion here, and we'll have an open Q&A for our guests who are here. Feel free to ask questions either in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask verbally with your words. Either way, but tonight, like I said, I'm very honored to be joined here by Dr. Ben. He has been at the forefront of health and wellness for nearly 50 years. As a clinician in the fields of fitness and health, he has initiated and promoted behavioral interventions that have proven to be effective in the treatment and management of degenerative diseases that plague our public health. Dr. Ben has applied his extensive recognized background and experience in diet and exercise as the basis of his intervention protocol. Initially, in 1974, he introduced slow resistance training to the exercise world in a successful attempt to provide safe, high-intensity exercise to all populations. And we'll talk about high-intensity exercise today. He was the first practitioner to include resistance training to phase 2 cardiac rehabilitation in 1982, and that's now accepted standard protocol. He also pioneered high-intensity exercise for endurance athletes in the mid-1980s. Another thing I want to touch on for sure today. And lastly, he introduced high-intensity exercise for weight loss management programs, including the OptiFast protocol used by the first popular bariatric surgery protocol called OptiFit. He's been an expert consultant to professional college teams, the U.S. Olympic Committee, the National Football League, Major League Baseball, pretty much everybody. He has, on the academic side, he's published more than 200 articles and study reports in the fields of fitness, health, and exercise. His work includes the acclaimed book, 15 Minutes to Fitness, which we'll talk about tonight, and the sale of more than 300,000 smart DVDs in 31 countries. He's continuing his work as an investigator and consultant to Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, Arizona State University, and a number of academic and corporate health institutions. And with that, welcome, Dr. Ben.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here again.
So, got a couple more folks I'm just admitting now, but let's get started. As I was reading 15 Minutes to Fitness again. I think it's the third time I've read it, and each time I read it, I get something else out of it. There's so many little nuances, so many little nuggets of information there, but I think if I were to summarize it, I would say that, you touch on the diet piece, and controlled carbohydrate eating. You touch on the exercise piece with high intensity exercise. And I would say if there's one thing where they kind of meet in the middle, that I would say it's all about hormones. Is that fair to say, or you think?
Well, I guess it's all about what these behaviors do, what they drive, what they instigate, what pathways they stimulate. And I guess that's the whole health thing is really about energy and signals and reception of signals. And you can get down to what they call redox biology. It really gets down to how we regulate protons and electrons, if you really want to get down to it. But yeah, and the hormones are probably the manifestation of all of those balances or imbalances chemically that drive certain levels of health or ill health, I guess. So that kind of milieu, that kind of whatever that soup of your hormone combinations are, is going to be directly involved with determining your health.
Yeah, that's a great sort of overview. What would you say are the biggest ones to think about? I mean, we hear about insulin, leptin, ghrelin, human growth hormone.
Okay, so if we're starting off with the premise that we have metabolic health issues, okay, and most of those issues really involve the accumulation of too much energy in the form of body fat that starts to permeate, and then blood sugar that starts to permeate into cells in areas where it really doesn't belong at the concentrations that it gets to, which we call diabetes, or we call Alzheimer's, or we call obesity, or circulatory, heart artery problems and things. So, I mean, really, insulin really is it's a major factor. And I think glucagon is a little underrated. That's the other side of the seesaw of insulin whatever insulin does, glucagon doesn't. Whatever glucagon does, insulin doesn't. You know, they're both located in the pancreas, the alpha cells and the beta cells for insulin, alpha cells for glucagon are right next to each other. So I must be aware of what the other one's doing. And so that kind of regulation, I think, is kind of really important. Another one that's not mentioned because it's so abused in the news kind of is like growth hormone. I mean, pituitary gland produces this hormone as we're growing and as we're young, and apparently it dissipates in its effectiveness and in its volume and intensity as we get older. And if you measure that, and there are ways to maintain higher levels and things like that. But I mean, I know of clinicians when I was a kid, when I was in my 20s or 30s, who would tell me about this stuff and say, we've got these people that are just frail and they're dying because they're old and they're just feeble. And we give them growth hormone and they're fine. I mean, these people come back to life. And after the study's done in 6 or 12 weeks, we take them off it and they're dead in like 5 days. I mean, so there's something, obviously, it is a representation of vigor and health. Obviously, I think longevity, so staying young. I mean, since mankind got organized, whenever that was, there's always been a search for the fountain of youth. And youth, to me, is kind of, or anti-aging is kind of an arm's length creation of your philosophy on life and your physiology, staying as far away from death as you can, which would be anti-aging. The ultimate aging would be death. So I think all this health stuff has really to do with, when you're young, you don't think about it in those terms, but I think it has to do with anti-aging and not dying and not degenerating to the point where on one side of the spectrum we have health, on the other side illness, and on the really base side of that illness we have death. So that's what I gave the talk about in Boca too. I just think it's fascinating. There's so much information now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really appreciated you talking in Boca. I mean, every time I've heard you speak, I think you've done the last 3 or 4 of those Low Carb USA events, and every time it's something different. It's not sort of retracing.
Yeah, before that I did mitochondria, and if you think about mitochondria, they're really the mechanism of energy production and utilization. And what does that mean? It means that it keeps the cells vigorous, energized, youthful. I mean, all this stuff is, think about it. We got cells, which are little people. We have millions of these little people that can live and die and be healthy or not, can be vibrant or not, can be decrepit or not. And they're like, as many of those little people as we can keep youthful, the whole body will respond and be youthful. I mean, so you can look at it at the micro level, the cellular level, and at the macro level, the whole organism of a human being. And it's such a high correlation. So behaviorally, what do we do to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves as well as ourselves healthy? I mean, that's what we're all about, right?
Yeah, I like that. And your talk, you began with a short video, and I believe was it your mother-in-law lifting weights?
My mother-in-law, who I just trained today. Okay,
is that right?
88, and she was doing 8-pound, nice slow dumbbell lateral raises. I mean, you try 8 pounds, that's some real resistance, and 15-pound dumbbell curls, and so wow. You can maintain that strength. And, she's 88 and, maybe a little bit exceptional, but she does her walking every day. She eats really well, has since I know her. And, this stuff can happen. It ain't magic. I don't think she's like a superhuman genetic species. She just has taken care of herself,
That's cool. That's very cool. Can I embarrass you a little bit and share this?
I think you can show the stuff. Whether you can embarrass me or not is a whole different issue, Davey.
This was one of your slides from Boca.
Okay.
And, sort of a before and after. I mean, we're used to diet books having a before and after, but this is pretty extreme, I think.
Little background on this, okay?
Yeah.
When I did the book, they said you've worked with a lot of celebrities and movie stars and athletes and this. Do you have before and after? I said, I don't take pictures of my clients or patients. If they want pictures, they can take them. I don't think it's professional. So they wanted before and after pictures. So as a joke, I found this picture on the left when I was 25. I was
Uh-huh.
in Boca Raton in no, actually I was back in Staten Island. Anyway, somebody doubted that I could get muscular or strong doing the workout. So I did a workout and I had my Speedo from Boca Raton when I was in grad school under my workout shorts. So I jumped up on a bench and I did that pose like a bodybuilder pose. I'm not a
Yeah.
bodybuilder, but I just made a pose, right? And so then I thought about it when I was writing the book. I said before and after. So I took a picture when I was 65. I was just starting the book. And as a joke, I said to publishers, I said, here's before and after. I said, this is before I got old and this is after I got old, you know? And then I was doing this talk on anti-aging. So I said, let's do one. That was a few days before the conference this year in January. So I threw that in there to say, that's a 50-year gap almost. And, I'm not obviously what I was when I was 25, but, maintained a lot of, the fitness and the muscularity and strength and stuff like that.
I'd
So
say so. Yeah. Yeah. You're looking good, man. You're looking good.
that was the story.
I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, I want to grow up first.
So what's the relationship of strength to longevity or
Okay,
anti-aging?
so I think I'm going to beat this horse to death a little, but I saw a study, and this is before I did this. I saw a study a number of years ago done by a guy who I had done presentations with 25, 30 years ago. Okay, anyway, it's a study by Ruiz and Blair, 2006, British Journal of Medicine, I believe, 2006. Anyway,
Okay.
I think they had like 10,000. I believe it was men, but it might have been people. Don't hold me to it. It's a long time. Anyway, and they tried to determine which factors, which correlatives are most strongly related to longevity. And they studied, smoking and diabetes and obesity and blood pressure and all kinds of parameters. And the one that came out to be the most significantly correlated was muscle strength. So the takeaway was, if you're in the top third for your age and gender and muscle strength, singularly alone, you are basically 40% less likely to die of cancer and 40% more likely to live to be 100 as a
Wow.
single correlative. So now think about that. You're saying, well, you're a muscle guy. Okay, I had nothing to do with the study, but
Right.
if you think about what that's really saying, it's saying that if your muscle system is working at a good high level, okay, that all of the support systems, the endocrine system, we're talking about hormones, the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, skeletal system, obviously, have to be working at a pretty high level to support the demand that high level muscle status has attained. Okay, so that's basically, I may be going in and out a little bit on this picture because there's like a rain coming down in Phoenix, believe it or not, Scottsdale, which doesn't happen. So probably freaks out my computer. But anyway, so that's the story. So it is, and I think there's so much support for that it's ridiculous. Okay, that's why sarcopenia, the loss of muscle, is now being really treated seriously, saying this is a cause of death. This is this starts to go down that cascade, that slide, and you better watch it because it's indicating there's a lot of metabolic stuff that's not functioning at a good level.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. And I like that. And you make that point in the book as well about, because we think of muscles as in isolation, right? They get us around and, they look nice. They look good if you get them all swole, but, that I think what you say in the book is that it's the strongest, signaling system that we have, right?
I mean,
as far as an organ.
a lot of our physiological development as a species had to do with muscle demand. Even the brain, there's plenty of evidence to that. Okay, so the more you demand, and we had demands, to survive, to get food muscularly, and all of the systems that support that effort. I mean, I'm an exercise physiologist, right? But what does that mean? It means I study physiology, and I just studied it under the most extreme demanding conditions, which are exercise. So it even manifests some of these mechanisms even more significantly, I think. But really, what we're trying to do when we're trying to stay healthy, when we're trying to eat properly, behaviorally, what we're trying to do is epigenetic, meaning we may have a predisposition in our foundation, which is our genome. We may have that tendency, but it will not be manifested in almost any case unless we, pull the trigger. The gun is the genome, and the trigger is the epigenetics, is the behavior, the environment, and things like that.
Okay.
And that's very fascinating. I mean, and now we are seeing, Dave, in this anti-aging stuff for real, the ability to take genes, okay, and maneuver the genes, because all genes are a bunch of protein signaling situations, okay, combinations, and we're able to manipulate them to the point where they can take now, I think, what would be equivalent to a 60-year-old monkey, and through some genetic manipulation, get them to be on, when you take a test, you take their cells to be 30-year-old monkeys. I mean, this stuff is happening. This is really happening. And again, it all goes back to when, you say I do different topics, but every time I do a different topic, it comes down to the same thing. It comes down to energy. How effective are we at maintaining energy levels, signaling energetically and clearly, responding appropriately to energy? All this whole deal, there would be no low carb, there would be no Dr. Ben if we had this total control of energy. But energy is, I think, the root cause and the root solution.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a whole different sort of framework to put it in, right? I mean, even the word anti-aging is sort of, thinking about, I always thought of it as, keeping from aging, right? Trying to put the brakes on that inevitable downhill climb. But if you're talking about, being able to manipulate monkey genes to almost reverse aging, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that it all comes down to energy uptake and energy usage, and that
and I gave this example, but I think it's a nice example. Okay, when you get a brand new CD, okay, it's perfect. And it sends the beautiful music, or it's talking whatever perfectly, clearly, loud, everything. Okay, as we put it back and forth and we use it, we put it in the folder, we put it on the desk, we put, it gets nicks and scratches. It becomes imperfect. So at some point, if you take that, ad infinitum, it becomes you don't know what the hell's on there. You can't tell, you can't read it, and you throw it away. Well, cells are like that. They degenerate a little bit, and you lose the strength of the signal, the clarity of the signal. You also lose the ability to respond to it, to hear it, as everything ages, but mainly that CD. But now they figured out a way to polish those scratches out. So you've still, again, you've got the same genome that you had, but now epigenetically, we're taking out all the interference, all the aging, all the usage or abuse, or whatever you want to call it, and make it like new. I mean, pretty close. That's cool. And I think in the next 5 years, David, I think you're going to see some wacky stuff as far as curing, reversing certain genetically involved conditions. I just think, healing. I'm looking forward to it if I make it next. But but still, that to me, this is really happening now. This stuff is going on.
Yeah. I feel like epigenetics is a term I hear more and more lately, and it used to be like, oh, you have the gene for red hair, you have the gene for cancer. It's a done deal, right? It's a sentence of some kind. But epigenetics, the idea that you can actually influence whether those genes, like you say, it's a loaded gun, but whether it goes off or not, you do have some control.
The thing is, you take two identical twins, right? They get separated, or whatever the hell the story is. Okay, and you see them at 45 years of age. One guy looks 65, one guy looks 30. I mean, so obviously they have the exact same foundational influence, genome, but look what happened. I mean, they've got plenty of that stuff going on. I mean, so, like you said, it's not a sentence. There's hope, and all you can do is try to reach your genetic potential, without making yourself insane. Because, like the same thing with exercise, how big and strong can you get? Well, the closer you get to your genetic potential, the more difficult it becomes, because you just don't have, you can't build a 70-story building on a frame and a foundation for a 2-story house, anyway, so but that is almost never the limitation. Genetics are almost never the limitation. It's always something, there's usually always something we can do to get closer to that. Okay, and again, without making yourself, fixated on some crazy goal. But
that gets me into something that I've been meaning to ask you, by the way, because I've been doing your workout. I did 96 smart workouts last year. I did 2 per week, 4 weeks each month. So managed to fulfill my New Year's resolution for the first time ever, probably. Yeah. And I definitely seen strength gains. I've definitely seen very small gains as far as, muscles here and there, a little bit of a lump here, a little bit of a lump there. But I've always had a difficult time really putting on muscle, even when I was in my best of shape. When I was 22 and I was rowing, twice a day, and my coaches would say, we need to put more muscle on you. And I remember at the time there was this discussion about people being ectomorphs or endomorphs or mesomorphs. I don't know if I have those words right. But
you're right. You're right.
Anything to that?
Well, what if somebody designated different body types? I mean, I can walk into a mall or someplace and tell you, so an endomorph is a heavy person, thicker. Okay, an ectomorph is a skinny person, angular, skinny finger kind of thing. Mesomorph is supposed to be a combination where you have good muscle, good leanness, and so those are the designations. They just made the different body types. They gave them names. Okay. And sure, I mean, if I see 2 women walking down the street, I'll say to my wife, that's a mother and daughter. I can see by the shape of their legs, the muscle formation, that kind of stuff just fascinates me. I say, oh, those are sisters, Anyway, so sure, you've got that. That's your genome. Okay, you've got that. So it's very difficult for someone who is an ectomorph. I mean, I know plenty of guys that are 6'1", 6'3", 6'4", that have always been skinny. Now, as they get older, they were skinny. Now they have a little pot belly. So they are the SOFIs or whatever it is.
You can identify that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then you have other guys that have wrists the size of most people's, necks, and they just, can put on a lot of muscle. That's just their physiology and anatomical structure. And then you have some people, the rarest species or phenotype, they call them. Okay. Is the person who's got a lot of muscle and very little fat. I mean, those are the guys we pay $10 million a year to run around and for us, the ball players and stuff. So, right. Okay, so yeah, but that's what that means. But I have yet to see a person who couldn't look, and we're talking about cosmetics now, couldn't look a hell of a lot better than they looked, independent of that predisposition. Okay, I used to have this gals come to me and show me a picture of a 17-year-old model coming out of the surf and say, can you make me look like that? I said, yeah, but I have to change your parents, and that's really tough. So so again, that's what that's all about.
Yeah, thanks. I want to make sure we get into the questions from the crowd. I saw Rich had his hand up. Did you oh, hang on, let me unmute you.
No, okay. Hey, yeah, I did have a quick question because I got to drop here, but
okay.
Yeah, Dr. B, so, we all work out, eating, we eat good at home. My wife cooks all natural stuff and we don't eat a lot of sweets, although I will have a quarter of a chocolate dipped Oreo every day, a quarter of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
a quarter, a half.
This should not kill you. Okay.
You're right. Exactly. So, but what food that one might consider sort of healthy that like you hear about tomatoes and the skin on a tomato is bad, right? I mean, bad. I mean, maybe that's a big word.
No, I hear you. I hear.
Yeah, give me one food that you would think, well, that's got to be good, and it's not good. It's something you should avoid. Just give me one.
Well, depending on who you listen to,
Yeah.
Well,
I'm listening to you right now.
Oatmeal. Okay, there's one. Everybody across the universe says oatmeal is the healthy food. Now, depends what that means. I mean, for some people it's healthy. For a lot of people, it'll spike their blood sugar. Now, is that healthy? Especially if you're trying to lose weight or you're pre-diabetic. So, steel grain cut, whatever the hell it is, oatmeal. Okay. And I have a buddy, one of my golfing buddies, I know for 25 years, I see him 2 or 3 times a week. Brilliant guy, right? And he says, and finally I got him to say, I said, Dan, even though you're not getting heavy, his weight has been ridiculously the same since he's out of high school. Okay. I said, I think, metabolically, at some point it may catch up to you, but he eats it every day. And for him, it's probably okay. But now we've got him where he isn't. And his A1C is down a little, not that it was high, but it's down lower, and all good things have happened. But I mean, that's one. And it's very hard to tell people. And even when I first heard that and saw the glycemic response, I said, holy shit, oatmeal, basically, if you don't put sugar in it, it's like eating friggin', kernels of something off the ground. I mean, so I thought it had to be benign. It tasted so bad by itself. But there's one, okay? I mean,
Okay.
and as far as the tomatoes, it's interesting. I'm Italian, right? When I eat tomato sauce, marinara sauce, and it has a very small amount of sugar, I still get a glycemic response that would be, it seems disproportionate, which makes me sad, okay?
Mm.
And some people it doesn't bother. That stuff I think is very individual, okay?
Right.
I mean, and
That makes sense.
but so that's why you have a glucose monitor. That's why you check your blood if you're really interested. Let's see, did this bother? Now, for example, what did I have the other day? I had some God, I think it was waffle. I had some waffle sweet potato fries with a burger, and I had 3 or 4. I almost never take, but I said, let me see something. So I ate 3 or 4 or 5. My blood sugar went down after I ate that hamburger with those things. So what the hell does that mean? Now, some people could eat a sweet potato or something, and it spikes it. So, this stuff is very individual. But generally, what we were told, I think all of us that are listening to this podcast know, what we were told by the government or by our doctors who listen to what the government people, who are bought out, say about stuff. You'd think, oh, Jesus, this stuff is great. It's healthy. It's also why we're diabetic. And, and a steak is unhealthy, right? You couldn't eat anything worse than a steak. You might as well just inject cholesterol into the linings of your arteries and die, So,
right.
this is common sense, a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Rich is one of my
Thanks.
coffee buddies, and he brings a pile of bacon to our coffee every Friday.
Oh
so.
yeah, and they all act like they don't want it, but they do, and they eat it. Anyway,
Yeah,
I got to drop, guys. I'll get the book.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
All right. Take care, Rich.
Take care,
Thanks
guys.
for coming, Rich.
Yeah, man.
There's
Everyone
my
else,
tape.
feel free to either drop a comment or a question into the chat, or unmute yourself if you have a question. Raise your hand. Any way you want to do it, really. We're pretty informal here.
Victor.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Can you touch a little bit on, I don't know, maybe other people have heard about the topic more in depth than I have. When we talk about creatine, basically all we hear about is, take the standard, 3 to 5 grams a day. It's going to help your recovery. After a certain age, it has cognitive benefits. But can you maybe get a little bit more in depth about it? Because that's about where, at least my personal knowledge ends on it. Can you maybe give us a little bit more insight on the benefits and,
Okay. It's again, I'm not a real big supplement guy, but I've given a number of talks and people have done interviews with me. And as I said, I think creatine has some really significant benefits, and more recently, the cognitive benefits. So again, remember I said, Vic, this is all about energy. Well, one of the initial stages of energy delivery is what we call the phosphagen, aerobic, anaerobic, okay, all that stuff. But phosphagen is the creatine phosphate that we store in our muscles, for example. And part of the creatine phosphate is a phosphate molecule and a creatine molecule, okay? I mean, it's pretty simple. So again, as we get older, okay, our ability to produce, maintain, respond to these energy delivery molecules gets muted or slows down, okay? And so it stands to reason that your phosphocreatine levels are probably down, and I think they are. So if you take this one part of that combined molecule, it helps, and it has been shown to help in strength, no question. The studies, but then they had some people, I think, I'm trying to think, the downside, believe it or not, I know the history of that pretty well. I was involved in that. Okay, the downside of creatine was what college, high school wrestlers were taking it like crazy. Okay, taking way too much. And they were getting dehydrated because they were trying to lose weight. And then they said, well, it has, it could have some deleterious effects. And that really was the basis of the downside. And then it became popular again because some people started to use it for basically anti-aging, for basically cognitive, and the studies that they've done with creatine supplementation, it seems like the cognitive capacity when they do these tests, what's a monkey, what's a tortoise, or whatever the hell, okay, people did better. And so it makes sense, again, back to that energy delivery mechanism of, overall health and function. I think it's one of the, just as fat is important, just as glucose is important, okay, creatine is one of the delivery systems in energy availability that as we're younger, the CP, or the creatine phosphate, or phosphocreatine, they call it both, it is at higher levels, and you can increase that level. And it seems to be that the increasing of that level is correlated with higher level of function mentally and muscle function. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll show you 1 second. I'll show you how much, how important it is. Okay, right here next to my computer.
Hey, all right.
Okay,
There you go.
I take it. I take it after I work out or do some activity, because that's when the protein uptake is probably a little bit. And again, that may be total BS, but I think it can't hurt for that to be part of the habit.
Okay, so you having said that, can I touch on one more thing? You'll have the people advocating or saying, do you take it pre or post?
It seems to me, Vic, again, we may be getting into the weeds. It may not mean a damn thing. It's like they say, take collagen before, like 35, 45 minutes before a workout. And it's another thing that the 2 out of the 4 things that I take. Okay, but take collagen before with a little bit of vitamin C, or at least you need vitamin C as what they call a cofactor to make it work. Half hour before you do a workout. So I take the collagen before, and I take the creatine after, and that's probably 85% of my supplementation, that I use.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, great question, Vic. Thanks for that. Now we have to know what the other 2 are. What are the other 2 supplements?
I do take. I'll tell you one that I've just found, and this is, I don't sell this stuff. I don't do anything, but when we were looking at this energy stuff and anti-aging, I did about 3 or 4 months of study, and I kept coming up with certain molecules that they said were definitely good for anti-aging. So one of the molecules, and again, this goes back to energy. Energy, if you think about a battery, you got a positive and a negative, you got a proton and an electron, not to get into the weeds because I don't know that stuff that well anyway, but the point is, energy has to do with electrons and protons changing places, and getting high gradients and changing the gradient and all that stuff. So you got the protons, okay, and you need the electrons for the electrons to have something to balance against, and gradients, to make like a battery kind of a situation happen, okay? So NAD, nicotinamide adenosine diphosphate, is a proton donor. It's found in every cell, okay, in our body. And it seems that as we get older, our NAD levels decrease. So I've seen a number of studies now, legit studies, not pharmaceutical studies, studies with people that they know that are science dudes and they just want to know stuff, okay? And it seems that 1 gram a day. Okay, I have to back up. Sorry, you cannot take NAD on the skin or orally. It has to be injected or through a drip. So what's the next step? So we cascade, and it's a derivative of vitamin B3 actually, and then there's an upstream and downstream, segmentation of how it processes. So 1 step before NAD is something called NMN, Nancy Mary Nancy. Okay, nicotinamide mononucleotide. Okay, but it's NMN. It's all over the friggin' world now, because that increases NAD, which increases proton donors, which increases energy capacity. Okay, again, energy capacity. So you can take 1 gram a day of this NMN, and it increases, I think in 45-year-olds plus, it increases our blood NAD by 50%. In other words, it'll double it, actually increases it by 100% in 6 to 8 weeks, which can't be bad. No downside. I looked to try to see if there's any downside, stomach upset, anything, nothing. So
Wow.
I started taking NMN just probably now 2 months, okay, after doing all the study. That's one of the things I take. And then I take, what the hell else do I take? I don't know, maybe I take some multi thing or something, but and like during the COVID, I was taking zinc, okay? Because that seems to me to be prudent. First of all, with any of these things, find out if there's a downside. If there is, how bad is it? But if there's a downside, I try to stay away from it. But in some of these things, it appears to be no downside. You're wasting your money, I guess. That's your worst downside. So I think, and an anti-aging thing at my age, what the hell? What could it hurt,
Yeah.
So, that's the other thing.
Cool. We did have 2 other supplement questions in the chat. Going back to creatine, do you see more water retention with creatine intake?
That's what it does. So in the muscle, you have, say your muscles are like a little hefty sandwich bag of noodles and goop, like thick stuff, like it's thick. Okay. The noodles are your muscle fibers, or what they call myofibrils. Okay. Those are your muscle fibers. And the soup is sarcoplasm, which is this plasma stuff. I think of it like lo mein and Chinese food, where you have noodles and some sauce and stuff. And so when you take the creatine phosphate, okay, it's stored in that sarcoplasm, which is probably 90% water. And so there is a volumization of water. That's absolutely true. Yes, but don't forget, muscles are 78% water. Okay, so it's hard to distinguish, but yes, yeah. And I've had some women who didn't like it because they put on what was measured as muscle, but it was a lot of water, and they didn't like that. And they had water retention issues and stuff. So yeah, that's not uncommon. Yeah, it happens.
Gotcha. Thanks. And that was Bob Collins. I think you probably met Bob at Low Carb USA as well. Another question came in from my friend Krista. She said, "What are your thoughts on taking MCT oil daily?" Uh-oh. Thank you. Froze up, Dr. Ben.
Yeah, looks like he's frozen.
Give him a second. I know you've got an electrical storm going on. There you go. You're back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard, but MCT oil. Any thoughts on MCT oil?
Yeah. Well, some of the studies on cognitive function on MCT oil. I know who knows a lot about that is Amy Berger. But yeah, MCT oil, supposedly MCT oil, coconut oil. There have been a number of studies. There's certainly been case studies with I think MCT oil is basically Lorenzo's oil. Remember that whole thing with well, you would know that more than anybody. Yeah. But so I think it's fine. I don't know if it's totally necessary for everybody. What are you trying to accomplish? And what do you think it's going to accomplish? But apparently it provides, I think, and again, I'm not super expert at this, I don't think, but it provides a mechanism for an alternative energy source other than glucose. And then when you come to the brain, that's very important in the nervous system. So I know a lot of people swear by it. I've used it for a while, and then I just got lazy and I didn't seem to miss it. So I said, what the hell, but I mean, I would have no problem with somebody using MCT oil, and there are other people, like I said, I think Amy Berger, one of her Alzheimer's antidote, or remember I think she went into a couple of good case studies in there. She knows that stuff cold.
Yeah. And last month I interviewed Mary Newport, and of course she knows
Mary,
that stuff
right, exactly,
now.
absolutely. That's right. Yep.
And I'll tell you just anecdotally, when I do wear a CGM, I'll get a dawn effect. I'm usually at 100 plus 105, something like that in the morning, and it'll kind of hang there. And then around 10 a.m., I'll have a tablespoon of MCT oil, and then it drops precipitously right afterwards.
Right.
So
pretty cool. Yeah, no,
my body is switching.
That's another
over.
one. I don't think there's a downside to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Cool. Well, I've got a couple more questions, but if anyone else has a couple that came through email, then I'll ask. But if anyone else here on the Zoom has questions, feel free to just shout out. The post that I wrote on my blog the other day, because like I said, every time I read your book, I find something new in it. And there's a page, I think it was page 45. You talk about how the high intensity workout triggers adrenaline, and that there's a role of adrenaline in fat burning. And sort of signaling to the, as far as I understand, it signals to the fat molecules to break down some of that triglyceride into fatty acids, send it into the bloodstream for fuel, right? That's and so of course somebody wrote right away and said, can I just watch a scary movie instead of working out? Would that
you
have the same
can.
effect?
Do that for a couple of months. Let me know how it works. No, I mean, but it's true. I mean, you know, it's the lady with the baby under the Volkswagen kind of a thing. Okay. So what's happening is you're using, in that circumstance, you're using phosphocreatine. That's your phosphagen, this initial, that's the spark. Okay. Then the flame comes from glycogen. That's your next. Okay. Now, when your body's demanding this stuff at this enormous rate, which is an adrenaline response, okay, then your body's trying to back this thing up by releasing energy, fatty acids, which is going to be the next fuel down the line to be asked to do something. So yeah, that's what happens. That's why when after you have an emergency, after you have an adrenaline kind of response to something, that you're shaky, right? You're shaky because you got so much goddamn energy when these free fatty acids have come to back up. You're done with the emergency, whatever, and now you got so much energy. You're basically have so much energy you can't control it, kind of a thing. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Okay, because I was thinking about that. I had a near accident over the summer, right? And then I had one of those moments where everything tingles and everything. I know. All of a sudden, I feel like, you know, just full of all this crazy energy. But I imagine if you don't use it, then it just gets reabsorbed.
It gets recycled.
Yeah. So you do actually have to do the work to then burn that energy.
Yeah, right? I think so. I think that would be, you know, it's like when I was studying this anti-aging, the resveratrol, which they say is in wine, and it's anti-aging and it's really good. That's why the French live or whatever the hell. Okay, now they found, and it's true, resveratrol is an anti-aging element, is molecule. However, you would have to drink 150 glasses of wine a day to get the therapeutic, you know, dosage. So that's why you take it in the capsule form, you know.
Right. Yeah, that would have some negative effects, I would imagine.
Yeah, no,
there is a
try
downside
that one
to 150 glasses of wine.
150, not 250. Don't be crazy.
150. Okay. Sorry. What about, so I have a list of buzzwords here that I hear all the time, and speaking of stuff that's kind of probably nonsense, one thing I hear all the time is muscle confusion. You know, you have to mix up your workouts because you have to confuse the muscles.
Yeah, that whoever, and I think it was Joe Weider or one of those guys who actually coined that term. But the idea is that it's true, your muscles will become indurated. They will become just used to the same stuff. Okay, the same demand, let's put it that way. So some people thought, well, if you just change the exercises, that would be, and you know, you would confuse the muscle into hyper responding, okay, responding more significantly. However, you know, being a little wise ass that I am, I said, okay, my system, we take each exercise to failure, okay? By definition, you never get used to failure, because if you were used to it, you wouldn't fail. So every exercise that we do will confuse the muscle enough, or whatever they want to call it. I think it's a term used to jump off and, you know, to send you, well, this program has 45 different routines, and that's really, you know, it's bells and whistles, you know, kind of a thing. I think it's bullshit.
Yeah. Thanks. Another one that, speaking of bullshit, another one that I've heard that some controversy around, I guess, some people say static stretching is no good. They'll say, it's old thinking. You don't need to
Well,
sit still and
okay,
stretch.
so let's think about what stretching is. First of all, if anybody out there thinks they're going to actually stretch the muscle, okay, the only way you stretch the muscle is to damage it, okay? But there's a mechanism in our muscles. At the end of each muscle, there's tendons.
Mhm.
Those tendons have receptors. They're called stretch receptors. So
Okay.
their job is not to allow the muscle to stretch significantly or quickly, abruptly, so they prevent tears and damage, okay?
Okay.
When you stretch, what you're really trying to do is to have these inhibitory stretch receptors be less inhibitory. So you're trying to set, in other words, you get used to that tension. You know how you do like a yoga pose, you do stretching? I tell
Yeah.
people, try to consciously breathe it out, relax it consciously. So what we're doing is we're trying to disinhibit the inhibitors to a point where they won't inhibit as much and you can actually get more range of motion.
Huh.
Okay, without this inhibition causing pain or tension. That's
Okay.
really what you're trying to do. So static stretching is fine. And it actually, there's plenty of studies show static stretching is fine. And dynamic stretching, pulse stretching is okay, except you have to be careful that the forces that the dynamic action cause and create is not enough to trigger the inhibitors, the stretch receptors to disallow the stretch that you're trying to get accomplished in the first place. So yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense if you have a good kinesthetic sense of your body, but to be taught that, you have to, I think somebody has to almost kind of teach you that. I don't think it's intuitive to everybody.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. Well, and it's certainly safe enough to go through, like the stretch routine in your book, where
Yeah, it's
you're
pretty
doing
simple stuff. It ain't magic.
Yeah. All right, one more buzzword that I'll throw at you. I hear sometimes functional fitness, which generally they're talking about using compound exercises being better because they use more muscles, coordinated
Mhm.
together in a way, like a deadlift or a squat or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. There is such thing as functional fitness. Okay. It has almost nothing to do with your resistance training. Okay. Peter Attia is, has some people that have done this functional training. And I think it's fine. I think it's fine. However, here's one element that they're all missing. Functional training is really skill training, getting good at doing something. Okay.
Mm.
And it's almost incredibly specific. In other words, I was a shot putter. If I throw a 16-pound shot, okay, and I want to get better at it, so I throw a 20-pound shot. So now this is going to be relatively light. It has almost no correlation to my ability to function as a shot putter. Okay.
Mm.
If I get on a machine and I try to simulate a sports move, okay, oh, it's just like a golf swing, or it's just like a tennis serve, or it's just like whatever the hell it might be, okay? The best functional training is to do that specific movement as specifically as you can to get good at that. Because once you add weight, resistance, speed, you have created a different neuromuscular fine pattern, okay? Which can almost become confusing because you go down a pathway, you don't know where exactly to go. I think functional training. Now, if you're talking about older people like me, okay, and you want to have them get better at getting out of a car or something, okay, to me that's kind of practical. Then you want to understand which muscles are involved in that movement, make them as strong as possible, and then if we really want to get into functional stuff, practice getting in and out of a car. Do it a few times. Do it in your garage. Okay, that to me. So if I'm going to, and you could sit in a chair and try other stuff, but if we're going to really, be nitpicky here, functional training has to be explained to me because, and just because world-class athletes do it, it doesn't mean that it's good. It means that these are genetic freaks that could do any friggin' thing,
Right.
and they're good at it. Okay, so you've got to be careful. Let's train like the NBA guys. Well, we're not NBA guys, and they're freaks of nature.
Yeah.
Okay, and you don't pay a guy $10 million because he's a normal person.
Right. No, that's a great point. Great point. Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And I like that. It goes back to what you said earlier about what's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Right.
Yeah.
What function are you training for specifically? Right. If it is something in everyday life, like, like you said, getting out of a car, getting up, being able to get up off the floor,
Yeah. Okay. Now there are legitimate tests to measure what they call functional capacity, which I understand. And then you can diagnose, if you really are into this stuff, which muscles are tight and restrictive, which muscles are weak. They can do firing patterns and stuff like that. But I think you take it too far, and then you just you're nitpicking, and I don't think it's worth that effort.
Gotcha. Well, we're coming up on time. If there are any other questions, just last call for any questions. Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself. Kurt, I see your hand over there. Let me see. Do I need to unmute you?
Yeah, I see a hand. Yeah, he's got a unmute or something, Kurt. I think I have the same problem. I don't know what the hell. There you go.
Let me try that.
My first time on the phone for Zoom, and probably my third time Zooming. Have your book. I haven't finished reading it yet. Just started lifting again after quite a few years of not.
Okay.
I really find myself being fatigued after those workouts. The slow engaging the muscle. Actually, my brother who owns the gym that lifts all the time, he said he did it too, and he was really amazed at how it fatigued him and how much harder it is.
Yeah.
Question is, the elliptical machines I use, the legs, it doesn't seem to be enough weight usually to get to that failure.
Yeah.
Time that you would recommend. And
well,
also,
what exercises specifically are you talking about, Kurt?
Well, leg curls and leg press and whatnot, and the Nautilus type machines that he has at his gym.
And the weight, the resistance isn't enough.
Well, if you want to fail within that 90-second period, no.
All right, so then and I'm pretty familiar. I was one of the original Nautilus guys. Unless it's machines that I'm not aware of, I would say you may want to slow down, because most of the machines, especially the early generations, I had monsters. I mean, monster NFL guys, and that didn't use the whole weight stack. So suggestion is slow down your reps. Say on a leg curl, if your form is good on that leg curl and your hips stay into the bench, okay, and you isolate, it's like a concentration curl. You have to isolate. You don't let your butt come up. You don't use your hips, and your reps are taking you, say, 8 or 10 seconds up, 10 or 12 seconds down. Okay, look at that first, because if that's the case on a regular Nautilus machine, which goes at least to 150 pounds. I mean, I had monster guys, like I said, NFL guys with legs like centaurs that couldn't use the whole weight stack. So just an aside, I'm saying, but so you're asking me, what if that's the case anyway, right? Like if I can't get to failure.
Right.
Well, like for example, if I do bands and I do squats with bands, well, the downside of the bands, one of the only ones, is trying to hold as much weight here in the bands as you can use with your legs, because they're so much stronger. So I pre-fatigue that movement with a wall seat to failure. You know what I'm talking about? 90 degrees.
Yeah, right.
Go to failure. Wall seat takes a couple minutes once you get used to it, 2.5 minutes, and go right into your squats. So now a lesser weight will get you to that recruitment and failure within 90 seconds for sure. That's one of the things you can do. So, but if you're talking about leg curls, that's a pretty much an isolation move, and I don't know what the hell. I mean, you could maybe. So what's your leg routine? Leg extension, leg curl, leg press, or something, or what?
Yeah, exactly. Just I forget what brand he has. It's actually made by the Nautilus. He has the shell shape things. I forget what brand, like Ice Star or something, Star or.
Okay, I don't know all of them, but okay. So
yeah, but
usually, again, the other thing you can do, it's not as time efficient, is you can do one leg at a time. I mean, and I can't imagine anybody that.
That was another thing I was going to do. So is it, if I was to do another, let's say I did the machines and I was to do maybe dumbbell presses, is it redundant or is it helpful? Or if I wanted to extend that 15, 20 minutes it takes me and
Yeah,
do
okay,
some,
so, okay, you're asking me really, can I add stuff and will it be damaging, okay? The only time it's damaging, but it's not uncommon, is if you take the amount of exercise that you do to a point where it becomes more difficult to recover, okay? So the more is better thing, I had one guy who told me this years ago, he's been training forever, and he said, not one more set, one more rep. In other words, when you're to that point where you think you failed, see if you can get one more rep as opposed to resting and doing one more set. But if you're talking about a dumbbell press for delts, for your shoulders, for example, after like a lateral raise maybe or something like that,
right?
okay, that's fine. That's called a compound movement. Okay, and I don't have a problem with complex muscle groups like lats or pecs or even delts. Okay, but always do the isolation first. Isolate to failure. Okay, because think about this, Kurt. When you do a dumbbell press, what's going to fail? Your shoulders? No, your triceps. Okay, so what I would do is to fatigue the delts. So now we've kind of balanced the potential of the tricep to the delt because we've diminished the delt by making it fatigue. To go right from here to your press, now you got a nice combination of what we call a compound move, a compound set. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different things that, you can do to solve those problems. Those are good problems, but yeah, there's stuff you can do. Absolutely. You
Okay,
can
one
do,
more question.
yeah, sure.
When I first started, it was the failure part. Push yourself to that failure,
Mhm.
get
Yeah.
failure. What are your kind of tricks for that, where you want to give up maybe two reps before you should, or
Well, I mean, I think one is just be honest with yourself. I mean, I just trained today and I'm old and I got some, banged up joints, and you just, you don't try not to count much, even though it's really human nature. But all of it, and if you've completed a rep and you can try to start another one, say I'm going to get a half a rep or so. I mean, eat the sandwich in little pieces. Don't gulp it down. So it's just, you get to that point and, like a leg extension. Okay. And boy, that burns like a son of a bitch. All right. And I just try one more, just go for it. Get an extra inch, get up 6 inches. I mean, you generally can lead up, and it's really the honest, like, I think I got more left. And if you don't, you're going to stop like I did today. I'm up about halfway up. I can't move that son of, if you gave me $1 million, I couldn't move that thing up an inch. Okay. And so, but the more you control it, the easier it is for you to get that feel of failure and exhaustion. The quicker you are, the less formal, less structured the form is, the more white noise there is, and the more confusing it is to concentrate on that failure. So, and then one guy asked me last week, I was working out with him and he was doing rowing. And I said, oh, come on, pull. I can't. I said, pull harder. I mean, that's sometimes what I think. I'm pulling as hard as I can, pull harder. And if I can't, it stops, it's over. Okay. So yeah, I mean, but I understand. I mean, because if you're used to doing sets, and listen, what makes this very effective is that you're going to a point where your body's saying, this is heavy duty shit. This is an emergency. We want to create a safe, productive emergency. I want your body to say, holy shit, I can't do anymore. And I got 80-year-old ladies doing it. I mean, it's not like it's some, enormous feat of honor and courage. I mean, it's just, you go as hard as you can. When you can't move it anymore, goodbye. That's it.
perfect. Well, thank you very much for answering those questions.
No problem, Kurt. A pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, good seeing you, Kurt. Thanks for the questions, man. I do find that though in the gym, there's the mental game for sure.
Shit.
Like I'll stop and I'll say, wait a minute, I got another one in me. And then I'll have to like do that gut check to keep myself honest,
Yeah,
because
or
sometimes
I'll try. Not
human
see,
nature,
Now this is a very important point you just brought up. This is my little battle with one of my dearest, nicest friends, Mark Fukazawa.
Oh yeah.
The guy runs 100-mile races in his bare feet. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy's he's a very knowledgeable guy. But here's one of the points, they say aerobic exercise is great for your brain. Aerobic exercise is mind numbing when taken to a point of, of a long endurance. It's mind numbing. You want to have music. You want to have a distraction, because one step after another, 25,000 times, is boring for just about anybody on the planet. When you do this exercise, okay, when you do this exercise we're doing now, you're not focused on your mortgage, your wife, your car. You're saying, my friggin' legs are on fire. Okay. It is so cerebrally intense.
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing like it. And that means your brain has to be working and firing, norepinephrine, adrenaline, dopamine at high friggin' levels to try to get you there. I think this exercise is much more beneficial for your brain, even though the after effect of doing aerobic exercise, it's better for circulation and oxygen delivery. I think you can get it done with this in spades.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you can feel it, when I've got a good, at the end of a good session, I'm wrung out like a sponge, but I also feel like excited and,
but not to be threatening, but this is as hard as you can work safely and productively for 15 minutes or 20 minutes. That's big time, man. That's why you don't do it every day. You do it twice a week.
Right.
Let the benefits manifest themselves by recovery. And you do other things, but not at that level.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, any final words of wisdom before we let you go, Doc?
I think you picked my brain enough. There's almost nothing left in here. So, I mean, use your head. This stuff should make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, try to find somebody, myself included, you can always get in touch with, or somebody that you might think knows this stuff. And you should have questions. I mean, this is not everyday stuff. You should have questions. See if, and sometimes the answers sound good, but don't believe the first guy. See if you can get somebody else to, coordinate that thought.
I like it. Well, thanks again, Doc. For folks listening in on the podcast here, once again, the book is 15 Minutes to Fitness. Dr. Ben Bocchicchio, Bocchicchio. And your website is drbenbo.com. Great resources there, videos, media. And
one other thing, I got to tell one joke.
Yes, we need a joke.
All right. Two blondes talking to each other. First blonde says, I am so scared of bees. The second blonde says, that's nothing. I'm petrified of the entire alphabet. All right.
There it is, folks.
There you go, folks. That's what I came to say. Okay.
Thanks again, Dr. Ben. Really appreciate it.
Everybody stay well.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.